good afternoon, good evening, depends upon where you are in the world. This is Bill Gustin, captain of the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department. Today, we are conducting our hangout at Sprinklermatic University, which is a world-class fire suppression system laboratory directly west of the city of Fort Lauderdale. So I'm very proud to introduce the president of Sprinklermatic, Mr. Robin Collier. We will have to talk a little loud. We are outside, folks, and we are in the flight path of the Fort Lauderdale International Airport. So if you could just tell a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to give a shout out to our sponsor, Key Hose.
Robin Collier, Sprinklermatic Fire Protection. Here in Davie, Florida, that's our jockey pump. Welcome to our university. This is a long time coming, kind of a dream of ours, to try to give back to the community, not only the men and women here at Sprinklermatic, but the fire protection community. So we've kind of opened it up. We're kind of in its infancy and really how we will use the facility, but we've been partnering together with Metro-Dade Fire, City of Miami, and a couple other municipalities, and just really learning how to use the training facility. Basically, you want me to run through the
We'll do it. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves, but before that, I want to thank our sponsor, Key Hose. That's keyfire.com. That's an easy endorsement for me. I recently transferred into the training division, and if you want to put hose to the test, put it in your training division with back-to-back recruit classes, because that hose is being dragged and run around corners and upstairs all day, every day. And I don't think there's any more durable hose that has better flow capabilities than the Key Combat Ready. No, it is not the cheapest hose on the market. You get what you pay for with hose, and do not go cheap. If you're contemplating buying new hose for your fire department, it's an easy endorsement for me. I've used it for years. There's no finer hose than Key Combat Ready. If you can't afford that, there's other grades as well. But thank you very much, Key, for sponsoring our hangout. I've been in the fire service 44 years. And Mr. Collier, we're going to tell a little bit about your dad's business, how you got it.
My father started the company 30 years ago, down in Miami, Florida, right out of our house. We had a barn out back, and that's where we kept fittings. Even had a skateboard ramp, and we had fittings back behind that. I was the first employee. I was dragging buckets, probably about the age of 16. And basically was groomed to run this business. I have a partner, Tim O'Brien. We lost my father 3 years ago. We dedicated this building in his honor. Kind of choked me up for half a second, but that's what we are. We're helpers here. Basically here to promote the learning and the education. Try to push our people to the front and try to provide them the best education we can. That's why we built the facility.
And it is truly world class. I have to say that we were considering building something like this at the Miami-Dade training facility. And then when we met Mr. Collier, we're close enough to Miami-Dade's facility that it would be a waste of our money. There's no way we could duplicate this, even come close at Miami-Dade. So they not only conduct classes for the sprinkler industry, but I understand that firefighters in this area can actually take classes for the state of Florida Bureau of Standards.
Absolutely.
Their CEUs.
Absolutely. We've been approved by the State Fire College as an approved learning facility. That was the first step. And then what we have is 6 classes, 5 on site, one that we've done together at some of the training facilities across town, but 5 classes, 3 hours each. We have a residential fire protection system class that we have a curriculum, then a practical application. Then the next class is a Sprinkler 101, where we talk about hazard classifications, and then actually touching the risers, showing sprinkler head discharge, spray patterns, showing the differential. Then we have a dry pipe system where we have pre-action systems, fire cycle on-off. That's our 3rd class. Controls, including fire pump. We've got a diesel fire pump outside of view, 2 holding tanks. That's our 4th class. And then our underground class, where we have a series of different backflow preventers, hydrant, fire department connection. So again, we're right here at our infancy. We're adding to the system. Potter was here yesterday. They're adding to our program. Viking is generous enough. They're going to be giving us a foam system. We're just constantly adding. So, this was our dream. This is what we came up at first pass. And as we, as we have people ask us for different applications, meaning different systems, we'll try to add those. So we have a nitrogen generator that will be being added. That's a newer system, which is pretty cutting edge because of the corrosion and fire sprinkler system. So we'll just be constantly changing stuff out, adding to it, and constantly growing and learning. That's really what we're about.
I'm very proud to be here. We're going to have each panelist introduce themselves. And if I haven't asked you in previous Hangouts about your most memorable experience with a fire suppression system, like for instance, Dan Shaw, Jason Hobelman, if you would go ahead and just relate your most memorable or horrible, maybe both memorable and horrible experiences with the suppression system. Looks like Sam Hiddle, can you introduce yourself? Tell a little bit about yourself, Sam.
Lieutenant with the Wichita Fire Department. And I would say one of my most memorable experiences, I don't know if I talked about it on the last Hangout or not, but basically we got into a industrial setting and we had those sprinklers pushing everything down with cold smoke. And we ended up realizing later through the thermal imagers that when we were applying water, we were actually making the situation worse, not better. But due to the lack of visibility, we had absolutely no idea what we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and Sam, I just finished a two-part article. I think it's going to be in April Fire Engineering. And, you know, there's a double-edged sword with sprinklers, and I'm sure Mr. Collier would agree. Yes, they control a fire, and in some cases can completely suppress it, but it does make it difficult to ventilate a building. Then it looks like it's going to be Clark, Captain Clark from the Las Vegas area. Can you introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Captain. My name is Clark Lamping. I'm a captain with the Clark County Fire Department. Been on the job about 20 years. Currently stationed Station 11 on B Platoon. That's right on Las Vegas Boulevard, and we will be first into the Las Vegas Raiders Stadium, which they just broke ground on. How's that taste, Daryl Liggins?
Oh, well, I guess we'll segue into me. I'm Daryl Liggins. I'm a captain in Oakland, California, and my company is second due to the Oakland Raiders Coliseum area. And looking forward to the Hangout. Thanks, Clark.
All right, Captain Mike Dugan, Mikey D.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Dugan. I'm a retired captain from the New York City Fire Department. And my question for you and Sprinklermatic is, where is the freezer compartment to freeze the pipes? We just had Kennedy Airport lose the main feed going into the sprinkler system and destroying the baggage. And there are still 5,000 bags unaccounted for.
Where was that? That was at JFK, correct?
JFK, Kennedy Airport, correct.
Yeah, shut down the whole terminal.
Shut down the whole terminal. They did not protect the plenum space.
Yeah, that's Glenn Corbett, who is a fire protection engineer with Fire Engineering and John Jay College, sent me an email on that, and they did not heat the space, I guess, between the space between the ceiling and the roof. Would that be the case there, Mike?
Yes, it is, Bill. They did not heat the plenum space. And the pipe froze, and because the doors open all the time to outside, and one of the return airs is right there, it, all the people going in and out of baggage claim, and the air return is right above the doors. All the cold air went up in the top, and the pipe fractured, and I mean, it was dropping thousands of gallons of water.
Oh, jeez. Mike, it's good to have you back on this month. And Kyle Smith, the Red Rocket, soon to be promoted to battalion chief. You want to tell a little bit about yourself?
I'm Kyle Smith. I'm a captain with Cobb County Fire Department. Been here for 17 years. Our department had a memorable sprinkler fire back in the, I believe it was mid-90s or so, at a Kmart, where the propane on a forklift exploded and took the riser out at the back of the building. So immediately, right out of the gate, it was now an unsprinklered building. Thankfully, all the interior crews were able to leave before the fire was burning in that plenum space between that ceiling and the roof. But all our crews were able to get out, but ended up burning the building down with that one explosion taking out the riser.
We had a similar situation in about a 50-story building on the Atlantic Ocean where we had a boiler explode and blew chunks of concrete down on the beach in a mom and pop motel right on the Atlantic Ocean. No fatalities, but it took out the system, and that's something that we drill on. That I know that there's a limit to it, but I still want to throw key hose the gauntlet, and I want a lower hose from say 20, 30 stories. I know we can do it from 23 stories, Clark Lamping, because you guys did it in Las Vegas. But I am confident that with the newer generation of key combat ready hose, I believe we could suspend from one company, suspend 30 floors. I'm sure it's doable. We just gotta try, get the opportunity. Dan Shaw, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, Bill. Dan Shaw, Deputy Chief of Operations on A shift in Fairfax County, Virginia, and one of those 25 who survive and traditions training guys. And I would say the most memorable fire I had that was involved with a sprinkler system or a fire department suppression system was mostly when I was a driver. And I was fortunate I was a driver in an area with a high-rise district. And we had a working fire in a high-rise, and because of the code in Virginia, there's a particular distance that your FDC has to be from a hydrant. So instead of moving a hydrant, which is very expensive, they would just put yard stanchions in with the FDC. And so we had a working fire, and I am giving this yard stanchion all the business I can and flowing water, and the companies are still calling for water, and come to find out, once one of the companies sent a runner to go find where this pipe was coming into the garage and into the system, because there's really no maintenance you can do for a pipe that runs underground to the earth and then pops out into a garage. I was filling this garage with water because that pipe had corroded, and it was a steady pushing right into the garage. Fortunately, it was a split system, so we were able to hit another FDC and we were able to overcome the problem. But quite an issue to get to.
I was going to ask you something, Dan.
Yep.
Pardon us with the airplane noise. As I said, we're in the flight path. You were recently in command of it, because I saw you on the news. You were recently in command of a high-rise fire in a sprinkler building. It went to the second alarm. So it seems to me that just because a building is sprinkler doesn't necessarily mean you can't have a serious fire in it. Can you tell us a little bit about that second alarm you had in a sprinkler high-rise building? Was it just partially sprinklered, or was it a total NFPA 13 compliant system?
I imagine it was a compliant system. So it came out as a fire alarm on a Sunday. The building was a commercial high-rise, unoccupied, mostly. Still had occupants inside of it. The first two companies for us, that's an engine and truck. The engine arrived, conducted business as they should, as we always say in traditions. It's, they were combat ready. They were treating it like it was the biggest fire of their career. They got up to, I think it was the 12th floor, and they had smoke all throughout the structure. So they filled the box. Were able to track this thing down. It was a pretty long lay. The companies did a fantastic job. We're able to find it was isolated to a cubicle. I think it had started in a computer. But the biggest issue, and the reason we want the second alarm, it was just, any high-rise fire, anyone who's been on this and who knows, if you have a working high-rise fire, it's just manual intensive. I mean, there wasn't high heat. There wasn't a major fire. I mean, it was contained to an area, but we had a lot of smoke, and we had a lot of cold smoke, and we had a lot of water damage because they were unable to actually be able to cut off the sprinkler. And, honestly, one of the things we just invested in was this shotgun thing, which was fantastic and works great for us for, sprinkler. We had a fire with sprinkler connection, but it was, even though it was a smaller fire, and we know this across the board, what kills the majority of our civilians, I think it was 2,200 last year, that died in residential buildings, is not the fire, it's the smoke. And it's a major issue because to move all that smoke, it means you have all those people in that area in SCBAs doing work, and you're going to have to replace them. And that was part of the reason why we ended up going to a multiple alarms, was really more for the manpower. But the sprinkler did what it was supposed to. It confined the fire to where it was in the cubicle where it was, when it could just really spread unchecked out through that whole area. It was a large floor space.
It's good to see you again, Dan. And Jason Hovelman, sir.
Hello, I'm Jason Hovelman. I'm a battalion chief with the Florissant Valley Fire Protection District in North St. Louis County. Also a volunteer with the Sullivan Fire Protection District and a co-owner of Engine House Training. Happy New Year to everybody. It's good to see you.
Oh, tell us about your facility there that you have in.
Yeah. There's two that come to mind, and in my jurisdiction where I volunteer, we have a facility that over the last 25 years or so has expanded to multiple acres under roof, and they primarily do production and manufacturing of aerosol products, propelled products, and cans and containers. And they do a lot for other companies. They do the filling and the manufacturing. And I don't get into specifics because they're really picky about their proprietary mixes. And so I don't talk about specific products, but they use flammable gases, combustible gases, depending on who they're doing work for those products. And we've had probably in my time there, probably two really significant fires, but both times the suppression system and the safety factors that were put into those systems worked. They worked really well. We really didn't extinguish much of any fire in both of those cases. The system they put in place, I was telling Bill right before, they keep adding these gas houses, and that's where they actually fill the gas before the product goes online. And the systems they have in those, they're deluge type system, and the most minuscule flash will set that entire room off and completely deluge it. And it's pretty amazing to see what it can do. The second point I want to make about sprinkler buildings was on a big box fire that we had in a neighboring district up in where my career department is in North St. Louis County. And don't think that every fire is going to set the sprinkler system off, because they will add storage containers, and they built a room inside the storage area of this big box store, put a window unit in it that did not vent to the outside. And we had a significant fire, a lot of smoke in that back area, and not a single head ever went off. Not because of the system, but because of the way that they designed that back room. And, when your crews walk in the front door of this, huge ceiling, and they go in the stock room and you've got charged black smoke at the floor, you know something's not right.
Jason, we see it all the time. The guy will rent out a warehouse bay, a type 2 non-combustible building, metal deck, bar joists, bare building. And then he will build an office, a mezzanine, storage racks. The office is basically a wood frame shack. Puts a window unit, air conditioner, does not drop down the sprinklers. So it's a problem, and unless we're on a medical call or a fire call and see it, or our inspectors see it, he gets away with it for a while. And even if he does get a notice of violation, he'll file for an extension until his lease runs out, and then he leaves. So Sarah is our coordinator behind the scenes. Sarah, if you could run those pictures. I want to explain what the Sprinklermatic did for the Miami-Dade Fire and Rescue Department at our training. We call it a safety stand down in May of last year. Sarah, if you go ahead and just run those pictures, I'll describe what's going on there. Okay, that is a pump. How many gallons per minute is that pump, Mr. Cobb?
I think that's a
2,000 gallon a minute pump in a trailer. They brought it to our facility and connected it up to our water supply system and replumbed it back into our standpipe system of our training tower. If you want to just go to the next picture, Sarah. And fellas, are you seeing these pictures? Good. Okay. Let me take a look here. What the next one is. I think that's what they're installing the plumbing on that picture there, Sarah. You can move on to the next one. Oh yeah, there we go. They plumbed a fire department connection into this trailer, which was really neat because the pressure gauge on the pump, the pressure gauge on the apparatus was in a few steps of each other. So you could see us competing with the fire pump. There can only be one source of water for a fire suppression system. It's either fire pump or is it the fire apparatus pump in the FDC, whichever is a higher pressure. And we can teach our people the difference. When we exceeded the fire pump's trailer's pressure, then we would flow water. Otherwise, we didn't. But what are we looking at here now? Okay, FDC. Okay, show the next picture, Sarah. Okay, that's Adam Kroll, and he is conducting a flow test
Out of the test.
out of the test header of this fire pump. You've got a test header, you've got a fire department connection, and a jockey pump controller, and electric jockey pump controller, and then a controller for the diesel fire pump. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Let's see if you have any more pictures there. You have any other pictures, Sarah? Okay, that's just a better shot of the trailer and in the test header. And what a wonderful experience. Did you want to say?
Well, we've put several fire pumps, so they're fully operable diesel fire pumps with a plug-and-play application. So we use them when we have fire pump impairments. We've got 3 of them currently. This will be our 4th. We've got them rented right now, so several different applications. And so not only fire pump impairments, but like out-of-sequence work for construction right down the road. They've had it for over a year. But basically, an electrical supply to the controller, jockey pump controller, loss of pressure, activates the diesel. And it's a fully operable fire pump in a trailer enclosure. It's not 100% code compliant, but it's the next best thing. I mean, I can't figure out anything better. So we've got them for different pressures, different GPM, different applications. High rise that we were at just recently, 2 zones. Low zone burnt out. Mechanical or maintenance guy closed the water supply. Low zone fire pump burned up. And so low zone feeds the high zone. High zone was in some of the upper floors. Essentially, we pulled the fire pump into the parking garage, plugged in the water, and essentially used the existing controller with a control wire to the diesel. So we were able to get it back into to service. We were able to prove to the fire marshal we had the water, do the fire, do the test header. We're back in business. So able to occupy the building, remove the pump, rebuild it, put it back in place. So.
In your experience, you mentioned that the firefighters turn off the water.
I've seen it.
You've got a building with a fire pump, a post indicator valve out in front of the building. We've got sprinklers flowing in the building. A well-intentioned driver engineer notices the post indicator valve and shuts it off, thinking that he's shutting down the sprinklers, which he ultimately may do. But what is the consequence of that?
No stand, right? And then also no water supply to the fire pump. The fire pump will burn up. It will run. It's a race car, and it does not know to stop. So effectively, you're burning up that pump. That's exactly what the maintenance engineer did at this location. What he should have done is gone to the floor control valves, and that's some of what we're
going to talk about. What I think we'll do now is we've got this iPad on a tripod, and we're going to take it off, and Mr. Collier is going to start with the backflow prevention devices. I want you to understand that this is in Florida now. You would not have these backflow prevention devices where we'll start, but you would have the same thing. He's going to explain it would have to be in a heated area inside of the building. In fact, before we do that, I think we can start with the fire department connection, and then we'll go to the hybrid. So are you ready to unplug? And we'll take a little walk around to the facility. Come around here.
Yeah. So obviously this is a fire department connection, and essentially what we learned out in the field and what you just described, which the fire department would pull up, we can simulate a head, the fire pump activates, and essentially what we're trying to teach is control of the fire pump, right? So while the driver's connecting to the fire department connection, we walk in, we take a look at the fire pump, we're looking at the discharge side of the pressure, and essentially able to take control of the fire sprinkler system. So the fire department connection is connected to the discharge side of the fire pump, and it's effectively, this is their command center, right?
Yep. Now, again, this is Florida. This check valve.
Check valve.
If fire pump is pumping 160 psi, and we pump 150 psi, this check valve remains closed because we are pumping up against a closed check valve. Now, when we exceed the pressure developed by the fire pump, we open this check valve, which in colder climates would be inside the building in a heated area, and close the check valve on the discharge side of the fire pump. Now, is this
The
hydrant,
fire pump will stop. The fire pump's live.
and the hydrants?
The hydrant's live.
And would you explain this array here, Mr. Collier?
Well, we've got 2 different manufacturers, Ames and Azure. We've got 3 different types of backflow preventers. And it's a double detector check valve assembly, an RPZ, and an RPD. And so what we will do in this application is we will teach backflow and inspection, and then the 3 different types. Effectively having 2 students at each location, we can have 12 people out here.
Okay, do you understand that you've got a 30-story building and the city loses its water pressure? I mean, we've all flowed a standpipe. You know how vile the water is in the standpipe.
Yes.
We've got to have some type of device to keep that nasty water from going back into the drinking water supply. And most of these are 2 check valves in
2
them?
check valves, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Separated by maintenance valves, 2 control valves.
So we could close these and take this out and fix it.
Bleed the pressure and take them out and fix them, yes.
But if we did that, we'd still have the fire department connection we could pump in.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. All right, so these are all backflow prevention devices. Again,
3 different types.
Mr. Collier, if we close this down and we leave the fire pump running, we run a risk of burning up the fire pump.
Absolutely, no
Okay.
water supply.
Okay. All right, let's take a walk over here.
So we do a lot of residential fire protection. What we would consider this particular riser an illustration of like a townhome. So a 13D type system. It's a single, a 1-inch riser, flow switch, tamper switch, and then we actually put a backflow preventer on this particular riser, protecting the water supply. A lot of times, what we'll have is a multi-purpose piping. You have a single lead-in. We take in consideration the meter and effectively protecting the drinking water supply. We'd move to the next, which is our multi-family, up to 4 stories in height, 13R. And once we go over 3 levels in Florida, or 30 feet to the highest occupied floor landing, we've got to have a standpipe. So the correlation between the standpipe and the 13R riser is on purpose. In our standpipe application, we've got a just standard weight fire hose valve.
This is just a conventional.
Factory set. And then we have a field adjustable PRV. And then what we would have is a floor control valve assembly like we would in a multi-level building.
If you'd see that in here, I don't know if you can see this, there's threads in the stem. This is a conventional. One way of identifying a pressure reducing valve is that it has a smooth stem because the valve wheel assembly is not really mechanically connected to the PRV or the floating piston that reacts and changes in downstream pressure. Could you talk a little bit about the best way to shut off a sprinkler when it's a combination standpipe and sprinkler system?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to the floor of origin, and then essentially you're going to close the control valve. And I can do it if you'd like. But we close the control valve. It'll actually send the system into supervisory. And then what we have is 2 different applications. We have a test, which in this function tests the flow switch. And what we're actually able to do is push the button and take it into a drain scenario. So we'll actually drain the sprinkler system. So close the water supply, isolate the floor, and drain the water off that floor.
So the test would replicate the flow of one sprinkler.
One sprinkler head. It's got a sight glass there. Where that's got a graphic interface for the controller.
while I got you here, we teach in our officer development academy. When we have a electric fire pump controller, that we are to shut off the transfer switch first. Because if we shut off the main disconnect first, then the transfer switch turns on the generator. Okay. But there are times, I understand, in fact, I think I learned this from Kyle Smith, that you can press the red stop button if the demand on the fire pump has been taken away. Okay, understand. Back over here.
So essentially, we simulated a sprinkler head going off, right?
And that is music to my ears.
And then what we would consider, this is our next riser. This is what we would consider like a shotgun riser. It's a newer application. It eliminates the alarm check, right? So we have a retarded water motor gong. These two devices were replaced by the flow switch. The sole purpose of the flow switch is basically to simulate a sprinkler head going off.
Now, this is the kind of system I learned on up in the Chicago area. When I first learned sprinkler systems, it was the alarm check valve. It was an OS&Y. It wasn't a butterfly such as this. And of course, a 2-inch main drain. And we did have this retard chamber that I understand if it can drain faster than it can fill up, it won't set off. You put a pressure switch here for instance, to notify ADT or central station. But this is old school, correct? This is an old school water motor gong